Phillippe, Diederich, Pecha Kucha by J.D. Marks. Phillippe Diederich is a talented writer and photojournalist. He was born in the Dominican Republic, but as he grew up, he moved all over Latin America and lived all over Latin America. Later in his adolescence, he moved to Florida with his family and became an American. Diederich has written many popular books as well as popular short stories. His two most well-known books are Sofrito and Playing for the Devil's Fire. He also is known for other titles, such as Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which will be looked at later on in my presentation. Diederich has won a few awards for his work. He is the recipient of the 2017 Penn Phyllis Naylor Working Writer Fellowship. This award is given to an author for children's or young adult fiction work. Diederich received this award due to one of his pieces of work titled Finding Home at the End of the World. Before Diederich was born, an important event that would forever shape his writing took place. His parents were exiled from their home, Haiti. This was done by the dictatorship under Papa Doc Duvalier, who was the dictator in charge of Haiti at the time. They fled to the Dominican Republic. Growing up, Diederich heard lots of nostalgic talk from his parents about Haiti. To his parents, Haiti was home. I would suspect hearing all this growing up as a kid led to Diederich not truly knowing where he belonged. His parents belonged in Haiti, and they talked about it, but he was misfortuned by his parents' suffering in exile. Diederich was born in the Dominican Republic, but only lived there for a very short time. He moved to Mexico City with his family early in his life. You could say his early childhood years were spent in Mexico. To this day, Diederich has a home in Mexico City that he stays at from time to time. In the later years of Diederich's youth, he moved to Miami, Florida. He lived in a small community of Latin American exiles, just like his parents. This further enforced the idea of Haiti being home, yet still being unattainable, due to his parents and neighbors talking and longing for home, but they couldn't get there. Diederich was successful as a photographer way before he was even known to be a writer. He started at a small newspaper business in East Colorado. He has over 25 years of photography experience. He takes photos when he goes on trips to places like Cuba, Mexico, and tons of other places that his life has taken him. Diederich's success in writing came rather later in life than one would expect. He was 51 years old when his first work was published. Although he had gained recognition at 51, he had been writing his entire life. His photojournalism was the perfect way of mixing together his writing and photography skills together. The two main works of Diederich's that I will go over are The Widow of Calle Virtudes and the already mentioned Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Both of these short stories can be analyzed to see how his upbringing and circumstances as a child are put and portrayed into his writing. Both of these short stories share a theme of tragedy and dealing with it, the best that you can. Once again, this theme can be seen in his early life and his exposure to his parents' way of dealing with their tragedy, of exile, and possibly his own personal tragedy, born in exile, of trying to find where he belongs and where to call home. The Widow of Calle Virtudes is about a woman whose husband goes away to find work by sneaking across the border. He leaves and never sends word back. The woman, named Maria, finally hears word of her husband's death and spins into sadness and mourning. She dates a few men as the years pass to try to provide for her and her son. A few years pass by, and one day her husband magically returns. It's like a miracle. However, he was badly deformed due to an accident with a train on his attempt to cross the border. He was missing a leg, and his face was scarred and deformed. She was happy he was back, though. She was not a widow. She was, as Diederich wrote, happy to be like everyone else again. Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a story about Diederich's journey to Cuba to meet people who share the Cuban culture and love for antique Harley-Davidsons. Diederich meets many people such as part builders, bike restorers, and bike collectors to learn about the culture they created around motorcycles to deal with their hardships. In an interview, Diederich said, "I think I write about the disconnect between people and family, and about the influence the Cold War left in Latin America. This is exactly the tragedy Harley-Davidson culture helped to heal. With this new sense of community, the people of Cuba came together. Both of these stories show how people deal with hard times, as Diederich had to. Maria, in order to deal with being a widow and not having a man to provide for her and her kid, she dated men to fill that spot. In Cuba, the country was very messed up, so the citizens created their own community and culture around vintage Harleys, all when facing hard times. Diederich's upbringing and youth play a large factor in his writing, as well as artistic style and interests. As a child, he watched his parents deal with tragedy. He was basically raised around it. The trials he faced as a child and growing up can be seen in his writing in many different ways. Also, Diederich, being raised in Latin American countries, the Dominican Republic and Mexico, and even predominantly Latin American communities in Miami, since he grew up around all this, most of his stories take place in Latin American countries, mostly ones he has lived in or has visited in the past. The theme of tragedy and coping with it can be found in more than just short stories. In Diederich's debut novel, Sofrito, a man whose Cuban restaurant is failing decides to go to Cuba to steal a chicken recipe that was stolen from his family by Fidel Castro. The character learns to love Cuba and learns about his parents' life there. So many themes can be found that can be attributed to Diederich's life growing up. In conclusion, Diederich is a spirited writer who uses his past life experiences to influence his writing of great books and short stories, worthy of the praise and awards that they have received over time. Diederich continues to write and now lives in Florida. He lives with his family and has children of his own.